YouTube. It's Tone. I'm back with another one for you. So this one is got. Well, this is a continuation of the redemption manual. This is the 11th video here, and so what this gets into is the purpose of having your UCC one done. You know, when I did it, it was fucking before I even knew what the fuck I was doing. But I took the examples out of the one man out, did all that shit. Um, I'm glad I did it now. Now that I know what the fuck it is, this is like 4 years ago, and I had been studying it for like a year or two prior to that. So I'm like 6 years in studying this shit, and so I'm glad I did it. I'm not glad I didn't know what the fuck I was doing with it, but getting it done is absolutely crucial when you understand the name of the game is that everything is commercial. So it's absolutely crucial to the game that you get this shit done. I did a couple videos on doing the UCC one and then the UCC three after that. So go ahead and check those out. I go into detail about what the purposes of them and all that shit like that. So really, really good shit to know. And you know, regardless of what it is that you're going to be doing, it's good to commercially secure your commercial conduit, right? Definitely. So let's get into this. So UCC one, better to have it done and not need it than need it and not have it done. So today, the majority of Americans pay taxes because when they get a job, their employer requests that they fill out either Internal Revenue Service Form W-2 or Form W-4 or Form 1099, which as a direct result withholds taxes from their paychecks for their labor. The majority doesn't have a clue as to why they are paying these taxes in the first place, other than being conditioned to pay their so-called fair share. It has been affirmed that labor is a fundamental, unalienable, protected right, and this fundamental right is not supposed to be taxed. Not profit or gain is to be realized via your labor, okay? Because that's called slavery, and people don't realize that shit either. So it is presumed that everyone is expected to know the law. It has been long held that ignorance of the law is no excuse or a defense. There is a well-established maxim that states, "He who fails to assert his rights has none," and that's true. If you don't know you have any rights, or you don't know what they are, then you don't fucking have any, do you? Which unequivocally establishes that just as a closed mouth never gets fed, and matter to be expressed to be resolved. The Bible book of Luke 11, chapter 52, verse states, "Woe unto you lawyers, for ye have taken away the key of knowledge. Ye entered not in yourselves, and them that were entering you hindered." Okay, so what they do is just basically fuck you every time you go and speak to them, because they're just trained in procedure and case law. And they don't fucking know law at all, so they can't even fucking tell you about it. You know what I mean? So when it comes to dealing with lawyers, governments, and the Internal Revenue Service, which is not an agency of the United States government, but a private foreign-owned corporation, withholding and keeping knowledge from the people is nothing new. It is a common business tactic that they have been going on from the beginning of its inception. It will most likely continue as long as we rely upon lawyers and governments to do that which we ourselves should be doing. The Bible unquestionably verifies with this following book. Isaiah 5, chapter 13 tells us, "Therefore my people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge." And the book of Josiah 4, chapter 6, verse, "My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge." In order to find the answer as to why your labor is being taxed, when the Constitution says it's not supposed to be, it is necessary to understand how government exists and operates. Now, to accomplish this requires a quick review back in history of the time that the war between the states and the people of this nation lost their true Republican form of government on March 27th, 1861. 7 southern states walked out of Congress, leaving the entire legislative branch of government without quorum. The Congress of the Constitution was dissolved for inability to disband or reconvene. The Republican form of government, which the people were guaranteed, ceased to exist. Out of necessity to operate the government, President Lincoln issued Executive Order Number 2 on April 1861, reconvening the Congress at gunpoint in executive emergency martial law rule jurisdiction. Since that time, there has been no de jure sanctioned by law Congress. Everything functions under color of law, the appearance of semblance without substance of legal right. Right, so this is how they're doing. They're operating essentially through corporations, pretending to be government, and this is how they want you to view them. but they're really nothing more than gassed up Walmart employees. Just so you know, that's a fact. And it's I have all the DUNS numbers and all that shit. These motherfuckers ain't gonna act like they're somebody special when you have all of their fucking registered DUNS numbers, bro. You're not government. Cut it out. So executive orders under authority of war powers, emergency law, necessity. The law of necessity means no law whatsoever at per such maxims of law. So necessity knows no law. The law of forbidding killing is voided when done in self-defense. In time of war, laws are silent, and so we've essentially been at a state of war since then, right? And so they charge you with murder and things like that under a penal code, which is commercial as well. So keep that in mind. So to establish the underlying debt of the government to the bankers to create corporate entities that are legally subject to the jurisdiction in which they exist, and to create jurisdiction itself correctly. The so-called fraudulent and unratified 14th Amendment was proclaimed and passed in 1868. This was a cess-to-K trust operation in law. Incorporated a military, a private, international, commercial de facto jurisdiction created by and belonging to the money power existing within the emergency war powers and only operational jurisdiction since the dissolution of Congress in 1861. Through the 14th Amendment, an artificial person, corporate entity, franchise, and entitled citizen of the United States was born into private corporate limited liability. Section 4 of the 14th Amendment states the validity of the public debt of the United States to the bankers shall not be questioned. Within the above referenced private jurisdiction of the international bankers, the private and foreign-owned Congress formed a corporation, commercial agency, and government for the District of Columbia on February 21st, 1871. Chapter 62, 16, Statute 419. This corporation was recognized June 11th, 1878, Chapter 18, 20, Statute 102, and renamed United States Government. The corporation privately marked the name United States, capital U, capital S, U.S., USA, USA, and America. When the United States declared itself a municipal corporation, it also created what is known to be a cess-to-K trust to function under by implementing the Federal Constitution of 1871 and incorporating the previous United States Constitution of 1787 and 1791 as amended by laws. Naturally, as the trustees of this trust, they're empowered the United States government to change the terms of the trust at will. They can only change the ones that they made, mind you. As evidence under Federal Constitution of 1871, the 14th Amendment, the people of the United States, without their consent, were declared citizens and granted civil rights. These so-called civil rights are nothing more than mere privileges which government licenses, regulates, and can be reinterpreted to suit its purpose at any time for any reason. The federal corporate government also conveniently somehow forgot to disclose to the people that the term citizen, which they have made every living and breathing inhabitant a subject of, was defined in law as a vessel engaged in commerce. Okay? So in 1912, and so that's the purpose of capturing your straw man commercially with the UCC1. That's what you're doing. And none of this shit has ever been about you. It's been about your commercial entity, your transmitting utility. That's what we're capturing here when we do this. All right. So in 1912, when the bank owned bonds and were keeping the U.S. governments afloat, became the bankers refused to refinance the debt. As a result, the colorable martial law ruled Congress was compelled to pass the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. This act surrendered constitutional authority to create, control, and manage the entire money supply of the United States to a handful of private, mostly foreign bankers. This placed executive creation and control of the money within the private, commercial, foreign, and military jurisdiction of 1861 into corporate limited liability. All right? So, United States is a fucking LLC. You know what I'm saying? Or like a corporation, better yet. So anyway, America converted from United States notes to Federal Reserve notes, beginning with this passage of the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Federal Reserve banks were incorporated in 1914 and 1916 and began to circulate their private corporate Federal Reserve notes as money alongside the nation's de jure currency. The United States notes, whereas United States were actually warehouse receipts for deposits of gold and silver in a warehouse bank, thus representing wealth, substance, portable land, the money of sovereigns. The new fiat money, Federal Reserve notes, amounted to bills for that which were not yet paid, i.e. what was owed for the new benefit of being able to carry the money without having to actually hold the gold. That's what it is. It's a promissory note, okay? And we can issue promissory notes just as well. You have to establish the value of any given bond in order to be able to issue promissory notes against it. That's what the UCC does, okay? It establishes a value upon which you can create promissory notes on, all right? So that's what it's simple basic finance, just so you know, all right? Around U.S. government debts, Federal Reserve notes in our wallets instead of gold certificates, silver certificates. We agreed to redeem the newly issued Federal Reserve notes in gold and also pay interest for their use in gold only. Essentially, the Fed issued paper with pretty green ink on it, and we agreed to give them gold in exchange for the privilege of using it. Such was a bargain. Through paying interest to the Federal Reserve Corporation in gold, the U.S. Treasury became progressively depleted of its gold. America's gold certificates, coin, and bullion were continually shipped off in coffers to various European banks and power elite in 1933. When the Treasury was drained and the debt was larger than ever, a financial condition known as insolvency, President Roosevelt proclaimed the bankruptcy of the United States. Every 14th Amendment citizen of the United States was pledged as an asset to finance the Chapter 11 reorganization expenses and pay interest on perpetuity for the creditors, Federal Reserve bankers, and the national debt, which shall not be questioned. And on March 9, 1933, Congress passed the Amendatory Act, also known as the Emergency Banking Relief Act, to the trading with the enemy, originally passed on October 6, 1917, at a time when the United States was not in a shooting war with any foreign foe, including the people of the United States as the enemy. So let's see. So at the Conference of Governors held on March 6, 1933, the governors of the 48 states of the Union accommodated the federal bankruptcy of the United States Corporation by pledging the faith and credits to their state and to the aid of the national government, which attached you. But not you, all caps you. That shit is not you, all right? So know that. So Senate document 43 of the set, and also you is a fucking cow. EUEWE, the same thing as you, and that's fucking chattel. That's a fucking cow, all right? Just so you know. So are you still you? So Senate document 43 of the 73rd Congress, first session 1933, did declare that ownership of all property is in the state. And individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government, i.e. land amounting to mere user only, and individual use of all property is subordinate to the necessities of the United States government. Under House Joint Resolution 192 of June 5, 1933, Senate Report 93-54-9, and Executive Order 6072, 6012, and 6246, the Congress and President Roosevelt officially declared bankruptcy of the United States government. Regardless of the cause or the reason, what many Americans either do not understand and or have failed to seriously grasp is that by the use of Federal Reserve notes, which is not constitutional money defined under Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution, the people of the United States since 1933 have not had any constitutionally lawful money or any way to pay their debts. They therefore have not had any way to buy their own property. The people, for the benefits granted to them by the bankrupt corporate government, discharge their debts with limited liability using Federal Reserve notes. They have surrendered by way of unconscionable contract any semblance of rights in exchange for mere privileges. A review of the countless United States Supreme Court decisions since 1938 landmark clearly establishes that only the state has constitutional rights, not the people. The people have been pledged to the bankruptcy of 1933. The federal law administered in and by the United States is the private commercial law of the creditors. So it's all just corporate policy. That due to the bankruptcy, every citizen of the United States is pledged as an asset to support the bankruptcy, must work to pay the insurance premiums of the underwriting necessary to keep the bankrupt government in operation under Chapter 11 bankruptcy reorganization. That upon the declared bankruptcy, Americans should operate and function only in their corporate colored, state-created, all capital letter name that has no access to sovereignty, substance rights, and standing in law. The Supreme Court also held that the general universal common law no longer is what? No longer is what? Let's see what the fuck they're talking about. Because I'm even curious now what the fuck that they're talking about. Let's see. Is no longer accessible and in operation in the federal courts based on 1933 bankruptcy. You see, so you need to have contracts in order to have any fucking rights, because all of these people are corporations that you're dealing with. They can't talk about your private rights in a fucking corporate venue because your private rights are private and their fucking corporate venue is public. So that's why you need to have get your contracts in. So which placed everything into the realm of private, colorable law merchant of the Federal Reserve creditors. To take this to a different level and not only explain why you pay taxes, but also why you do not own the house you live in or the car you drive or anything else you think you bought and paid for. You will need to understand that this state government and its creditors own it all. If you think you own your home just because you believe you paid for it using those Federal Reserve notes, just like everything else you possess by permission of government, simply stop paying your taxes, your user fees and licenses, and see just how long the government and creditors allow you to keep it before they come and take it away from you. How can all this really be? Why haven't you been told all of this before now? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Every man is deemed required to know law. Governments expect you to know the law and hold you fully accountable for doing so. Ignoring these facts will not protect you. The majority of Americans have been giving public government education to teach them only what the public and creditors want them to know, which is how to be a fucking slave. That's what the fuck that they trained you to do. So don't think that you fucking know what you're even talking about. So it is and always has been each individual's personal responsibility, duty, and obligation to learn and know the law. What this breaks down to in this book, back in 1933, when the United States went into bankruptcy because it could no longer pay its debts, it pledged the American people themselves without their consent as their assets to keep the government floating and operating. Because governments no longer had any way to pay its debts with substance, and bankruptcy, it lost its sovereignty and standing in law. Outside and separate from constitutional government to continue to function and operate, it created an artificial world consisting of artificial entities. That was accomplished by taking everyone's proper birth-given name and creating what is called a fiction in law by way of an acronym and name written in all capital letters to interact with a name written in all capital letters. It is not a sentient flesh and blood man. It is a corporation, a fiction, or deceased person. All right, government, as well as all corporations, including the Internal Revenue Service, cannot interact with you or interact with you via your proper name given you at birth, only through your all capital letter name. Another little tidbit of knowledge, which has been conveniently kept from the people, is this. When the several United States signed the treaty with Great Britain ending the Revolutionary War, it was a concession that all commerce would be regulated and contracted through British attorneys known as esquires only. So that's what your fucking bar attorneys are, okay? Those motherfuckers are running. They're basically your fucking pimps. And you guys are the fucking whores. How you like that one? So this condition and concession still exists today. No attorneys or lawyers of the United States of America has ever been licensed to practice law. And you know that because go ahead and Google a fucking license to practice law. You're not going to find one. They fucking made that shit up. They made that shit up. The fuck out of here. So to practice law, they exempted themselves as they are legal fiction persons and only an admitted member to practice in the private franchise club called the bar, which itself is an acronym for British or barrister aristocratic accreditation registry. All right. So, and as such are unregistered foreign agents, and so non-citizen aliens are specifically prohibited from ever holding an elected public office or trust whatsoever. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 states, no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding office or shall profit under the trust of them without the consent of Congress, except any present, emolument, office, or title or any kind whatsoever from the king, prince, or foreign state. So, as a direct result, attorneys and lawyers cannot and do not represent you in your private capacity. Attorneys and lawyers represent corporations, artificial persons, and fictions in law only. Only. All right? So they can't even fucking speak about you to anybody in the courthouse. They've never been fucking protecting you, and they've never been for you. They only represent the fucking trust, and their job is to help the fucking judges and these other assholes jack your fucking estate. That's all they're trying to do is get into it, crack in there. So what the majority of this country fail to realize is this. Because of the bankruptcy and having been pledged as an asset to the national government debt, this makes all citizens debtors under Chapter 11. Debtors in bankruptcy have lost their solvency, have no rights, and have no standing in law, and are at the mercies of the creditor via their attorneys. All courts today sit and it operate in non-constitutional, non-Article 3 legislative tribunal, administering the bankruptcy via their statutes, codes. All courts of the Title 11 bankruptcy courts, where all these statutes are in reality commercial obligations being applied for the benefit or privilege of discharging debts with limited liability of the Federal Reserve monopoly, colorable Federal Reserve notes, debt instruments. And go ahead and fucking Google the color of monopoly money and Google the color of Federal Reserve notes. Same fucking color, it's the same fucking thing. All right, so that's the purpose of getting your UCC. It makes you the fucking creditor and gives you your goddamn rights back, because otherwise you're at the mercy of whatever the fuck that these corporations tell you. This means every time you end up before a court, not only do you not have any standing in law to state a claim upon which relief can be granted, you have no constitutional rights. Why? Because you are the debtor under the bankruptcy, and in addition to having contracted away your rights in exchange for benefits and privileges, you do not have one single shred of evidence to establish otherwise. Remember, if you do not know and stand up for your rights, you do not have any. The initial SBC filing helps to do exactly this, as well as create a separation between the debtor and the secured party. It creates a separation between you, the live living man, and the fucking corporation fictitious entity that was created by the government. It creates that separation by filing your fucking UCC1. That's the purpose of it. In bankruptcy, only creditors have rights. In a nutshell, as a debtor, you have no rights. Rights are reduced to mere privileges which are licensed, regulated, and can be altered, amended, and changed to meet whatever the particular or special needs of their government may be for whatever whim. If taking away your home and car, taxing your labor, or locking you up for violating any of their 60 million plus legislatively created debtor codes and statutes they have on the books, today happens to meet their need of their government. It really doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize who the loser will be. And that's the whole fucking thing. In court is the fucking paperwork. If you ain't walking in there with no fucking paperwork in your hand, you're probably gonna get locked the fuck up. Because that's what the fuck it comes down to. You see, court doesn't even move forward without any paperwork. The judge can't even fucking speak on nothing without the paperwork. So if you don't fucking have any, especially to fucking establish that you even have any rights, you don't have any contracts, you don't have nothing with these people, they're gonna fucking trample you. You're gonna get fucking trampled. Guaranteed. It is a game of chess. Stop playing checkers with these fucking assholes. That's what I got for you for now.